Do you still think Oprah Winfrey is just the queen of inspiration? The woman who lifts everyone up? Think again. Just a few days ago at the Cannes Lions Festival, Oprah dropped a bombshell about Whitney Houston, the legendary singer who died in 2012. She claimed Whitney was high on drugs during her final appearance on The Oprah Show, fell off the stage, and Oprah begged the entire audience to keep those photos hidden for 17 years. But here's what's even darker. This isn't the first time. Oprah has a clear pattern of interviewing legends about their deepest struggles, and then telling their stories again after they're gone, after they've been ghosted by death. What she's doing is way more disturbing than you think. Chapter 1. Rewritten and Expanded. Oprah Winfrey built her empire on lifting people up. But what if that same hand sometimes pushes them back down when the cameras stop rolling? For decades, Oprah Winfrey has been called the Queen of Talk, the goddess of inspiration, and one of the most powerful women in the world. She turned personal pain into a billion-dollar brand. She made audiences cry, laugh, and believe they could rise from their own darkness. Millions tuned in every day to hear her say, "You are enough." Her interviews became cultural moments, intimate, powerful, and seemingly compassionate. But behind the warm hugs, the book club recommendations, and the tearful confessions, a different pattern has quietly emerged. A pattern that makes people ask, is Oprah truly the ultimate healer, or is she something far more calculated? Just days ago, at the prestigious Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity in June 2026, Oprah once again stepped into the spotlight. This time, she wasn't uplifting a living legend. She was revisiting the story of one who is no longer here to speak for herself, Whitney Houston. In front of an audience of media executives and creatives, Oprah revealed a secret she claims she helped bury for 17 years, that Whitney was high during her final appearance, fell off the stage, and that Oprah personally begged the audience not to release the photos. Why bring this up now? 17 years after Whitney's tragic death, why choose this particular story in this particular moment on this global stage? This isn't the first time Oprah has publicly revisited the pain of celebrities who are gone. Time after time, she has sat with stars at their most vulnerable, when they were struggling, when their lives were unraveling. And later, after tragedy struck, she has returned to those stories with new details, new angles, and new emotional weight. Some call it giving voice to the voiceless. Others are starting to see something darker, a pattern of emotional mining that leaves behind damaged legacies and grieving families. Think about it. Oprah's show wasn't just television, it was a cultural force. A single appearance could make or break a career. Her words carried enormous weight. When she listened empathetically, the world listened with her. But when she later reframed those private moments after someone had passed away, it became something else entirely. It became the final word, the official narrative, the version that millions would remember forever. Is this genuine empathy? A desire to teach lessons from tragedy? Or is it something more calculated, a way to stay relevant, to feed the machine of drama and revelation that built her empire? The public has long adored Oprah for her ability to connect, but in recent years, more voices have begun questioning the power dynamics at play. Who benefits when Oprah tells these stories? The audience seeking drama? The media cycle? Or Oprah herself, who continues to position herself as the wise, all-knowing narrator of other people's deepest pain? Whitney Houston's case feels especially troubling because of how fresh and targeted the revelation was. Whitney isn't here to confirm, deny, or add context. Her family and estate have already pushed back, stating that some details were inaccurate or taken out of context. Yet the story spreads anyway, because when Oprah speaks, people listen. This video isn't here to cancel Oprah, it's here to examine the pattern with open eyes. Because if you look closely at the timeline, the interviews, the struggles, the tragic endings, and the later retellings, something unsettling starts to appear. A pattern where vulnerability is shared on her stage, and sometimes the people who shared it never fully recovered. Oprah built her throne on stories of resilience, redemption, and raw truth. But in the case of Whitney Houston and others like her, the line between sharing truth and exploiting pain becomes dangerously blurred. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. This is where the story truly begins. Not with judgment, but with questions that deserve real answers. Who was the real Oprah behind the interviews? What happens when the inspirational queen decides to tell your story after you're gone? And most importantly, what did she just do to Whitney Houston's legacy all these years later? The answers may shock you. Chapter 2: Whitney's Last Stand, the 2009 Oprah interview. In September 2009, a fragile but determined Whitney Houston sat down with Oprah Winfrey for what would become her final major television interview. A raw, desperate attempt at redemption that the whole world was watching. Picture this. It's September 2009. The music industry is still recovering from the recession. Tabloid culture is at its peak, and Whitney Houston, once the undisputed queen of pop and R&B, the voice that sold over 200 million records worldwide, was fighting for her legacy. After years of public struggles, multiple rehab stays, and a marriage that had become tabloid fodder, Whitney was attempting one of the hardest comebacks in entertainment history. She had just released her highly anticipated album, I Look to You, her first studio album in 7 long years. The lead single, I Look to You, carried a spiritual, almost pleading tone that many interpreted as a cry for help and healing. Whitney carefully chose Oprah as the platform for her return. Not a late-night comedy show, not a music channel interview, but Oprah's couch. The most watched, most trusted, and most emotionally charged stage in daytime television. This 2-part interview was marketed as Whitney's chance to tell her truth, clear the air, and show the world she was back. The atmosphere in the studio was electric yet tense. Whitney appeared thinner than her glamorous 90s peak, but her presence was still commanding. She sat across from Oprah wearing a simple yet elegant outfit, her hair styled beautifully. For the first time in years, she seemed willing to be vulnerable in front of millions. Oprah didn't hold back. She asked the questions everyone wanted answers to. When she inquired about Whitney's drug use, the legendary singer replied with startling honesty. "What was your drug of choice?" Oprah asked. "Cocaine and marijuana, that's it," Whitney answered calmly, but with visible pain in her eyes. She went deeper, tracing when things spiraled. "After The Bodyguard, I had Chrissy. It started getting heavy." Bobbi Kristina, her beloved daughter, born in 1993, came into the world at the height of Whitney's fame and success. What should have been a joyful chapter became the beginning of heavier struggles. Whitney openly admitted she turned to drugs to cope with the immense pressure, the pain, and the need to escape the constant spotlight. She spoke about her turbulent marriage to Bobby Brown with surprising tenderness mixed with regret. "He allowed me to be me," she said. "He was fun, passionate, loving." In Whitney's eyes, Bobby represented freedom from the polished image the world demanded. But that freedom came at a devastating cost. Their 2005 reality show, Being Bobby Brown, had brutally exposed their chaotic life to the public. What was meant to be entertainment became a painful documentation of addiction, arguments, and a marriage slowly crumbling under the weight of fame and substances. Throughout the interview, Whitney oscillated between moments of strength and visible fragility. She laughed at times, recalling happier memories. She cried when talking about her daughter and her desire to be a better mother. She performed parts of her new songs, and that legendary voice, though slightly weathered, still had the power to move people to tears. For many viewers, it felt like a genuine turning point. The Queen was fighting her way back. Oprah played her role masterfully, empathetic listener, gentle inquisitor, and supportive friend. She created a safe space for Whitney to open up. The ratings were huge. The interview dominated conversations. For a brief moment in late 2009, hope surrounded Whitney Houston again. People wanted to believe in her comeback story. But looking back with the knowledge we have now, the 2009 interview carries a haunting weight. It was Whitney's last major televised appearance before her tragic death on February 11, 2012. She was found unresponsive in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Los Angeles. The official cause was accidental drowning, complicated by atherosclerotic heart disease and cocaine use. The same substances she had bravely admitted to using in 2009 had never fully released their grip. The pain she spoke about never completely went away. The industry that celebrated her return moved on quickly after her passing, while her family, especially Bobbi Kristina, was left to carry the devastating aftermath. This interview wasn't just television, it was a woman standing on the edge of a precipice, reaching out for understanding. Whitney laid bare her battles with addiction, the complexities of her marriage to Bobby Brown, the challenges of motherhood under the spotlight, and her deep desire to reclaim her throne. She gave the world honesty when so many expected perfection. Yet the tragedy that followed makes every hopeful word from that day feel bittersweet. It raises difficult questions about how society consumes celebrity pain, how redemption narratives are sold, and whether a single interview, no matter how powerful, can truly change the trajectory of a life already burdened by fame and trauma and addiction. In 2009, Whitney Houston tried to rewrite her story on Oprah's stage. For 2 emotional episodes, the world watched and rooted for her. But the ending had already been set in motion years earlier. In the private battles she fought long after the cameras stopped rolling. Chapter 3: What Oprah Just Did at Cannes Lions 2026. Just days ago, on June 23, 2026, Oprah Winfrey stood on one of the biggest stages in the creative world and chose to reopen a 17-year-old wound involving Whitney Houston, a moment that has left many people asking, why now, and what was really behind it? On June 23, 2026, at the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity in France, Oprah Winfrey received the prestigious Lionheart Award. The award celebrates individuals who have used their platform for positive impact. In her acceptance speech, Oprah reflected on the power of trust between her and her audience during the years of The Oprah Winfrey Show. She used this moment to share a story she had kept private for nearly 2 decades, a story about Whitney Houston. Oprah described how Whitney had appeared on her show for what would become her final major television appearance. According to Oprah, Whitney was clean during the first interview portion. Oprah even went backstage beforehand to ask Whitney about her intentions. But on the day Whitney was scheduled to perform in front of the live audience, things had changed. She had gone back on drugs, Oprah said. The first interview I did with her, she was clean, but the day she came to my show to perform in front of the audience, she was not, and she fell off of the stage. Oprah then described the critical moment after the fall. She knew that if photos or footage of Whitney falling off the stage while under the influence leaked to the press, it would destroy her. Whitney was already battling public perception and addiction rumors. One more scandal could have ended what was left of her career and public image. So Oprah made a direct, emotional plea to her studio audience. She begged them not to release any pictures or videos of the incident. She told them it would ruin Whitney's life. And remarkably, the audience listened. They honored her request. For 17 years, that moment stayed contained within the studio walls. No major photos surfaced. No tabloid explosion happened at the time. Oprah added a striking comment. That would not happen today, I can tell you that. In today's world of smartphones and instant social media, she implied, such protection would be almost impossible. This revelation at Cannes Lions was not a casual anecdote. Oprah chose to share it during a high-profile award speech in front of global media executives and creators. She framed it as an example of the deep trust she once commanded from her audience and as proof of her desire to protect her guests. But the timing and the details have sparked immediate questions and controversy. Why bring this up in 2026? Whitney Houston has been gone since February 2012. She cannot defend herself, clarify the context, or push back against the narrative. Her family and estate have already responded. They confirmed that a fall did occur, but stated it happened during soundcheck, not during the live performance, and firmly denied that Whitney was high at the time. They argued that some of Oprah's details were inaccurate or taken out of context. Public reaction has been mixed. Some people praised Oprah for highlighting the protective power she once had and for showing grace toward Whitney in the moment. Others have accused her of unnecessarily reopening old wounds and exploiting Whitney's tragedy for dramatic effect years after her death. On social media and in forums, people are asking whether this was truly about protecting legacy or about reminding the world of Oprah's power and moral authority. The story also fits into a larger pattern that many are now noticing. Oprah has built a career on intimate emotional interviews with celebrities at their most vulnerable. She has then, at various points later, revisited those stories, sometimes after the person has passed away. Each time she does so, she adds new details, new emotional framing, and new layers to the narrative. The audience is left with her version as one of the lasting impressions. In this Cannes speech, Oprah positioned herself once again as the protector, the one who begged the audience to show compassion. Yet by telling the story publicly now, she has placed Whitney's most fragile moment back into the global spotlight. The very protection she once fought for has now been lifted, by her own words. Was this a genuine reflection on trust and responsibility in media? Was it a way to illustrate how different the media landscape is today? Or was it something more calculated, a powerful storyteller once again using another legend's pain to strengthen her own narrative and relevance? The answers are not simple, but one thing is clear. When Oprah speaks about Whitney Houston in 2026, the story doesn't just inform, it shapes. It influences how millions remember a woman who can no longer speak for herself. And for many, that power, the power to protect or to expose, even 17 years later, is exactly what makes this moment so unsettling. Chapter 4. The estate strikes back. Whitney's family fights for her truth. Oprah's emotional story at Cannes Lions barely had time to spread across the internet before Whitney Houston's own family and estate delivered a powerful, direct response, one that turned the narrative upside down within hours. The backlash was swift and unapologetic. Just hours after Oprah Winfrey stood on the Cannes Lions stage in June 2026 and shared her 17-year-old secret about Whitney Houston falling off the stage while high, the official Whitney Houston estate pushed back hard. Pat Houston, Whitney's sister-in-law and longtime executor of the estate, took to Instagram with a clear, strongly worded statement that directly challenged Oprah's version of events. According to the estate, Whitney did fall off the stage, but not during the live performance in front of the audience, as Oprah had described. The fall happened during a sound check. The reasons were practical and innocent. The area was dark, and Whitney was unfamiliar with the layout of the stage. Most importantly, the estate stated in no uncertain terms, absolutely not high. Pat Houston's message was blunt and emotional. She wrote that the family owes Whitney the dignity of telling the truth, not repeating myths. The implication was clear. Oprah's public retelling, whether intentional or not, had revived old damaging rumors that the family had worked for years to correct. Instead of protecting Whitney's legacy, they argued, this new story risked turning her into yet another exaggerated tabloid tragedy. The statement didn't stop there. Other people close to Whitney also spoke out. A longtime hairstylist who worked with her during that 2009 period expressed disbelief and frustration, saying Oprah got a lot of nerve bringing this up now. Family members echoed the sentiment that dredging up this moment, especially framing it as a drug-related incident during the actual show, disrespected Whitney's memory and the truth of what really happened that day. This rapid response created a dramatic clash of narratives. On one side, Oprah, the global media icon, sharing what she presented as a story of compassion and protection. On the other side, Whitney's own family and estate, fighting to defend her dignity and correct what they see as inaccuracies. The public was suddenly watching a very public disagreement between two powerful forces, one with unmatched storytelling reach and the other with the personal authority of blood and legal responsibility. The timing made it even more shocking. Oprah had waited 17 years to share this story on a glamorous international stage while accepting a major award. Within hours, the people who knew Whitney best pushed back, refusing to let the narrative go unchallenged. Social media exploded with divided opinions. Some supported Oprah, saying she was simply sharing her truth and highlighting the trust she once had. Many others sided with the estate, accusing Oprah of exploiting Whitney's struggles for dramatic effect long after she could no longer defend herself. This conflict highlights a deeper tension in celebrity culture. Who gets to tell the final story of a legend after they're gone? The famous friend with the biggest platform, or the family who lived the private reality? The estate's strong response reminds us that Whitney Houston was not just a character in Oprah's anecdotes. She was a real woman, a mother, a sister, and an icon whose family still fights to protect her truth. By pushing back so quickly and publicly, the estate did something important. They refused to let Oprah's version become the definitive one. They drew a line. Enough with the myths. Whitney deserves accuracy and respect, even, or especially, 17 years after her death. This back and forth between Oprah and the Houston estate adds another layer of tragedy to the story. What began as Oprah's tale of protection has now become a public dispute that once again puts Whitney's most painful moments in the spotlight. The very dignity the family is fighting for is being tested all over again in real time. And in the middle of this drama stands the memory of Whitney Houston, a woman whose voice moved millions, but whose personal struggles continue to be dissected and debated by those who claim they cared about her. Chapter 5. The Pattern. Oprah and the Ghosts. Oprah didn't just do this with Whitney. What happened at Cannes Lions is part of a much darker, repeating pattern, one where vulnerability on her stage is often followed by tragedy, and then Oprah becomes the one who tells the final chapter. In 2009, Whitney Houston sat on Oprah's couch and laid her soul bare. She admitted her drug of choice was cocaine. She spoke about the pain after The Bodyguard, the heavy years following Bobby Christina's birth, and the complicated love for Bobby Brown. It was raw, emotional, and felt like a turning point. 3 years later, Whitney was dead at 48, accidental drowning with cocaine as a contributing factor. 17 years after that interview, Oprah chose a global stage to add the most humiliating detail. Whitney had relapsed, fallen off the stage, and Oprah begged the audience to hide the photos. The estate immediately fired back, saying the fall happened during soundcheck due to poor lighting, not while high during the show. The family demanded dignity instead of repeating myths. The pattern doesn't stop with Whitney. In June 2018, the world was shocked by 2 suicides in quick succession: celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain and fashion designer Kate Spade. Just days later, Oprah appeared on the red carpet and used their deaths to deliver a broader message. Every death, not just Anthony Bourdain, not just Kate Spade, not just people who are famous, every death is here to teach us how to live better, she said. She added that these tragedies should create a more open desire to talk about it. Oprah turned private pain and public loss into teachable moments about mental health. While many praised her for raising awareness, others felt it was opportunistic, using fresh grief to position herself as the wise voice guiding the conversation. The celebrities themselves were no longer here to control how their stories were told. Look across Oprah's career and the pattern becomes unmistakable. She built some of her most memorable episodes around addiction, mental illness, abuse, grief, and near-death experiences. Many guests were Black icons or major stars facing heavy personal struggles. Some relapsed publicly, some faded from the spotlight, some, like Whitney, passed away. Oprah then often returns to these stories, in interviews, speeches, or documentaries, adding layers of reflection that only she can provide. Her platform amplifies the narrative like no other. That power can destigmatize issues and help millions, but it also opens her to criticism. Is she exploiting these tragedies to maintain relevance? Is she turning human suffering into content that serves her brand as the ultimate storyteller of pain and redemption? Many of these celebrities were already ghosted in life, abandoned by partners, the industry, or even their own families. Whitney herself used drugs to hide the pain of toxic relationships and impossible pressure. Bourdain spoke openly about loneliness despite his success. The pattern is haunting. They bare their souls to Oprah, the world watches, and then many of them disappear, either literally through death or figuratively through silence. Oprah remains, telling the stories long after they're gone. This is what makes the Cannes Lions moment feel so much darker than it first appears. It's not just one revelation about Whitney. It's a continuation of a long pattern where Oprah interviews the vulnerable, the world consumes the emotion, and later she becomes the keeper of their most painful chapters. The question lingers: is this the cost of having the most powerful media voice in the world? Beyond the drama between Oprah and the Houston estate lies a much bigger question. Who really controls a legend's story after they're gone? Whitney Houston gave the world one of the greatest voices in music history. Her talent was transcendent. Yet too often, her legacy gets reduced to addiction scandals, tragic relationships, and now this renewed debate about a stage fall. The pattern Oprah represents, interviewing vulnerability and later narrating the tragedy, forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about fame, media power, and respect for the dead. Addiction is a real disease. Mental health struggles deserve open conversation, something Oprah has helped normalize over decades. But there's a line between raising awareness and exploiting pain for emotional impact or personal relevance. When the storyteller is still here and the subject is not, that power imbalance becomes dangerous. The Houston estate's swift response sends a clear message. Families and those who truly knew the icon will fight for accuracy and dignity. The public, meanwhile, gets to decide whose version they believe. Oprah just reopened an old wound on Whitney Houston. But in doing so, she revealed something larger, a pattern of how the media queen interacts with legends who struggle and then ghost. It's powerful, it's influential, and for some, it's deeply unsettling. What do you think? Is Oprah protecting legacies or shaping them for her own narrative? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you want more deep dives into the hidden stories of music and Hollywood legends, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Whitney's voice may be gone, but her truth, and the truth about the industry around her, still deserves to be heard clearly. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay respectful, and remember the legends for both their light and their humanity.